Mhm.
This is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage,
I'm Nancy Richards
along with Guillermo.
and Guillermo, yeah.
And today we have a really special guest on our podcast. He has worn many hats, but right now he is a Democratic candidate in the field to run against Nicole Malliotakis here in Staten Island and South Brooklyn. Michael Decillis, welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for
Welcome.
having me. I appreciate it. Yep. It's good to be back.
And yeah, and I've known you for some time now as an activist, as an organizer.
Mhm.
Um, we're both fellow teachers. On the last time you were on the podcast, we talked about
Yep.
being teacher tired, which is what I'm feeling right now.
I'm tired.
Oh yeah.
We're all confused.
Yeah, we all know the teacher tired feeling, so I want to give our listeners a chance to get to know you as candidate Michael DeSilla. So,
Yes.
just give us a brief introduction and what made you decide to get into the race right here and right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll start there. The reason I got into the race was predominantly because of last year. Last year's events that we held showed incredible engagement, enthusiasm, and turnout in the district in a way that I frankly haven't seen in
Yeah.
10 years worth of doing political work and organizing work and just being involved in the process. And the biggest thing that really kind of also did it for me was that the people who came out aren't the normal people that you see at the events that turn out. It was new, fresh faces. It was people from all across the political spectrum. We were reaching, it wasn't even that we were reaching. I think enough people across the spectrum are recognizing the damage that's being done. They see and they're impacted personally in some way. And it's different for everybody what they're seeing and how that what's driving them out the door. But for whatever reason it was, they showed up and they showed up in droves. And they consistently, the numbers got larger and larger, the engagement got greater. And we realized that this is a ripe opportunity to kind of take that and also recognize that there are many hard resets that need to happen, both locally and federally. Federally, yeah, the house is on fire. And we can talk about, fixing that, the roof and the walls after. We have to put the fire out first, and we need to take care of the guy with the gasoline can who's pouring it all over. That's federally. Locally, we need to look at our local political machine and how it basically has been electing the same people over and over and over again. We're not filling seats. We're not building a bench. We're not doing the things we need to do to actually take control and take power back and make sure that people, all people in the district are getting represented. And so that was the big motivation for me to get in. I mean, my background in 30 seconds, I'm a fourth generation Staten Islander. I'm third generation union. I had 35 years in public service. I've been a paramedic, a 9/11 first responder. I was a New York City police officer, New York City special education teacher, District 75. I was a civil litigation attorney, chief of staff in New York State Assembly, and also assistant counsel to the New York City District and Commission. I've worn a lot of hats. I've been in a lot of communities. And what this has afforded me as a candidate is an opportunity in kind of a horizontal way to really take a deep dive and a look and work with a majority of the populations that actually exist in New York 11, the healthcare workers, the civil servants, the people who are in school, our education system. I've been in all the different neighborhoods in the city. I've really had that deep look at all of that. And I understand it from a personal perspective, and I've also understand it from a policy perspective. And I think that as a continuation of service, this is the best way for me to affect greater change is to be able to take the experience that I have, this deep experience within the district, and be able to start creating and shaping good legislation and policy that is actually going to make a difference.
Look, again, I'm gonna put the dog down.
Okay. Guillermo has to take a little siesta, but and I always thought that that was a strength of yours as a candidate. I think your background, your knowledge, and your experience is things that many Staten Islanders see themselves in. And so
Yeah.
the event you were referring to last year, because the last year it feels like 7 years. It's like dog years.
Yes.
It's like
I
you're
know.
referring to those, empty town hall events
Yep.
that, of course, Nicole Malliotakis refuses to show up to
Oh,
an
sure.
actual town hall, and so
Hmm.
you were gracious enough to do it in her place. And
Well, somebody had to do it. Yep.
yeah,
No, we did that, the Medicaid, Medicare rallies, we did the immigration town hall, and then two No Kings events. So there were a lot of events for people to get involved.
Third one coming up on Saturday.
Yep. I'll be there.
Yes, we'll be there too. So,
Yeah, we will be. And so these town hall events, you mentioned their role in you deciding to get into the race. And I remember when you were on the podcast last time, I sort of subtly asked you, so are you in or out? So I was like, but you
And
were.
I definitely wasn't. I was on the fence. I did not know. And that's because if you've ever, and you know this because you've been around people who run for office, it's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very
Yeah.
large sacrifice of time. It's a sacrifice on your family. It's a sacrifice financially. Um, I was not born rich. I am not a rich person. I'm a renter. And so these are things that you take into account when you're looking at how you're going to plan literally the next year of your life. With 12 to 18-hour days. It's a big drain. At the same time, I felt that it's valuable and it's worth it and it's necessary. And so that's why collectively with my family made a decision that this is something we should take on now because it really truly is necessary. It's an unusual cycle. Every time somebody gets on, talks to you before an election, they say, this is the most important election of your lifetime. Well, we're kind of there. We've kind of actually almost jumped the shark with that phrase because this is literally probably the most important and consequential election. If it's free and fair. And that's the other big question mark hanging over the midterms is whether or not we are going to have free, equal access to the ballot this year in all 50 states.
be able to vote.
Yep.
Yeah. Who's going to have access to vote?
Mhm.
Our current Congresswoman supports the SAVE Act.
Of
and
course.
Pushing for it and has publicly pushed for it.
Yep.
Which leads me really to my question is, my husband is I want to, defeat Nicole Maliotakis. I think she's
Mhm.
horrible for Staten Island. And I watched two campaigns of Max Rose. One
Mhm.
was wonderful and the other one wasn't. Of course, the one that wasn't was the one he lost. But I felt that he he went to a march for the
Black Lives Matter.
The George
yeah,
Floyd march, yeah.
which a lot of people were at.
Mhm.
And Nicole used that, and as
Yeah, she
opposed
beat him over the head with it for two cycles,
right,
yeah.
but as opposed to as opposed to him standing up and defending his reasons for being there, I felt like the party kind of like
They ceded ground on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
No, that's
allowed her to beat
yeah.
and I'm wondering like I think the candidate that goes up against her needs to really call her on her bullshit.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, I've been that guy historically. We have a great relationship, Nicole and I. I call her bestie. She hates it. I gave her a Constitution for Christmas. It's been a great year. I've known her for longer than that, for 6 years, 8 years. We've interacted in a way that I know how I can get under her skin. I know that she's also afraid only of me. When the other candidates got into this race, she had no comment. When I got in, she wrote a paragraph in the paper. There's definitely something there. And it's frustrating because especially now, and this isn't just locally, this is nationally, we need to be strong and have actual moral courage. And most of the senior leadership do not have that. And locally, no, they don't have that. And they're afraid. They're afraid of losing whatever positions or power they think that they have. Um, and they're worried they're going to offend somebody. And if there is ever a time in history in America to take a stand and just say, this, I'm seeing what I'm seeing and I'm calling it what it is, now is that time. I've been doing that. I've spent last year being incredibly blunt and very honest, and I find that locally people are incredibly responsive to that. They crave that. They don't want political bullshit. They don't want some type of, milquetoast moderate statement. They want somebody to take a stand and be strong. It's a time for, compassion when it comes to your policy, especially with what's going on nationally. But you can't mistake, compassion for a lack of strength. You have to be strong.
do you want to give some examples of things that Nicole has done and while she's Congresswoman that you want to challenge her on right now?
Almost every single day she wakes up. So everything that she's done from the time that she's brushed her teeth to the time that she goes to bed at night.
Popular about something
yeah.
that she feels strongly about, I guess.
She feels strongly about a lot of the national issues. Well, I mean, she voted for things that we forget that she voted for laws that would arrest women for going from one state to another to try to obtain an abortion. She voted for things like that. She voted for the Big Beautiful Bill, which lowered Jeff Bezos's tax bill personally by $7 billion in one year, and kind of screwed
Not
everybody
mine.
else. Yeah,
I'm
not
paying
mine. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Basically,
Amen.
every single unjust, inhumane, and unconstitutional policy that Trump has done, she's gone and defended. So if I had to pick one or two, it'd be difficult. Basically, when she approaches her policy, when she looks at anything that she's trying to pass, she instantly divides everybody into segments of people who are worthy and people who are not. People who are true Americans and people who are not undeserving of protections under the law. And that's consistent and it runs through a lot of the legislation we have. People who are trying to access services, people who need Medicaid, Medicare, ACA, all these different services. When she keeps complaining about these don't work, these are over budget. We have all the budget in the world to help the billionaires and corporations. And I know it's buzzwords, but this is genuine because they keep getting huge tax cuts, huge tax relief. They do stock buybacks. They have a fiduciary duty to their own companies, not to you or me. Trump is treating America like, I mean, it's kind of, I saw a great article about how they were discussing how they're not even attempting to run the government. The government's not functioning. Like literally as a normal federal like agency, all the agencies are coming to a crashing halt. The Doge fired tens of thousands of workers, and they still managed to actually increase the amount they're spending on that and increase our debt by 3 trillion last year. So it's very difficult to tie any one thing in there, but essentially all of the undemocratic, un-American, and inhumane policies, which is every single thing that has been either an executive order or legislation passed within the past year, she takes ownership of. And so there isn't anything that she's doing right now to assert Congress as an co-equal branch of government. She participated in last year's Congress was the least productive Congress in modern history. And we're being literally overtaken by an executive that's out of control.
Well, absolutely. And she's happy to cede her power to the executive branch
Yep.
these days. And she actually voted against a bipartisan resolution to
Yeah,
rein
I
in
looked
Donald
it up.
Trump's war powers.
Yeah.
And so, which is a power that Congress has under the Constitution. And so she's, why is she even there? Why do we need her? Or any Congress, essentially.
Yep. That's what they're getting to. Yeah. They're becoming cheerleaders, and I'm surprised she hasn't crafted her own award to grant Donald Trump at this point, because everybody else is. And specifically with that, I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about. When she looks at things and makes a calculus, it's not a political calculus, it's a moral calculus, and it's weird because the types of decisions she makes as a Congress member, or lack of decision, and just support of the executive, not only removes her ability to represent the people, because that's the entire point. We elected her to represent us. There's like 733,000 people here that are relying on her to make sound judgments on their behalf, and she's absolutely ignoring them. And I also want to just touch real briefly that the kind of we have to kind of get it out of our heads that this district is as conservative and is as uncaring as everybody says it is. We have a very loud minority that has dominated our politics for far too long, and a
Yeah.
fragmented group of middle, left, and everybody else who has not really been united in any way that is visible. And we also have an incredibly diverse amount of communities in the district that are completely being left out of the conversation, and haven't really been touched upon at all. And so politically, it is. And so when you put all of these different groups together, that is the vast majority of this district. It is not the incredibly loud Scott LeBedos of the world screaming with their MAGA hats and throwing pizza over fences, whatever it is they do. Yeah.
Well, what is,
Can I just
yeah, go ahead.
So they're having a rally against this shelter on the South Shore.
Oh, yeah.
And one of their beefs, and all the Republican, she's going to be there, and
Mhm.
right, like all the Republican. One of their beefs is the poor planning. They said that they were not involved in the planning of this shelter. They were saying that the infrastructure wasn't set up. There was no sidewalks. There's no services, which actually makes sense. If they're going to
That's fair. Yeah. If you're going to do something, then do it right.
a shelter down on the South Shore, I think there's a valid argument with the fact that you were going to put people down there and there's no services for them down there.
Mhm.
How are they going to get to A to B, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean you still don't have then create, then where's the ideas to create the infrastructure?
She also just
It's none of
this.
that talk.
Oh, and Bensonhurst just last week or this week, she was actually there protesting a homeless shelter they're doing. So she's fought a brave fight against the homeless over the past 5 years.
The reality is there is homeless, and there's
Yes, well,
mental
that's the
ill.
thing. Staten Island often views itself as a gated community. They have homeless, but don't want homeless shelters. They have people who get arrested, but they don't want any prisons. They don't want any of the people who require services to get their services here or on the island. And so they want to kind of force them and both say, no, no, not in my backyard,
Or they want
without
all of St. George. That's where they want to
without,
put
oh
things.
yeah, they want to lump it on the North Shore. They don't want to, and it's difficult because you have, again, this where that kind of like strength comes in when you're talking about convincing, because your job as a representative, if you are advocating for these things, is to make the argument. You make the argument and you show them why these things are necessary, how it's getting funded, how these people are getting services, and why this is better for our community overall. Yeah, otherwise you like just like with when, the party kind of ceded ground before, you're just giving up and you're not making these arguments and then you're not accomplishing anything, because if you do get something, it's an incredibly minimized version that doesn't include the complete services that are required.
Absolutely. And just for our listeners, I think we've seen that for Democrats, it's not simply enough to be against Donald Trump and to be against the
Hmm.
party, or in this case, against Nicole Maliotakis, although for me, that's quite enough.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, for me, that's enough, but I know
Yeah.
it's not the case for the majority of voters. And so, what are some of the things that you would bring to Staten Island from a policy perspective,
Sure.
and from bringing resources back to the district? Because, Nicole Maliotakis, I would think if, in 15 years of elected office, I mean, there's not one single piece of legislation that I could think of that she has authored and
Yeah.
shown with successful conclusion at all.
Yeah. No, I have a lot of what's going on. I keep talking about the fact that we have to put the fire out first, but you know what? Yes, I want to use this as an opportunity right now. We're facing a turning point in our country in the sense that we've never had anybody who's literally tried to overthrow our Constitution and our government. We can use this as an opportunity, as a hard reset, to reevaluate how the American government functions for its citizens and who it functions for. Some of these things are pie in the sky ideas, and some of these things are things that we can take actual steps on. Pie in the sky, get rid of Citizens United. The first thing we need to do is turn off the spigot so that that large amount of money that's coming into all the federal elections, state elections, is removed, and it evens the playing field slightly. The second thing we need to do is a progressive taxation. We need to recognize that and attack it immediately, not with small steps, but actually take the steps that we need to start increasing taxes on millionaires and billionaires, closing corporation loopholes, stopping corporate welfare, and making sure that we recognize that 60 years ago the corporate tax rate was 52%, and when it was that high, these companies were rich and they were innovating and they weren't leaving New York City in droves. They were still functioning. Same with the wealthy who had a 91% marginal tax rate back then in the 50s and 60s. Somehow they were still rich. So I'm not concerned about somebody losing an incredibly small amount of their net worth, while we fund programs that are going to help. So what does that look like then? Okay, so we work on trying to get money out of politics in either large or small ways, but that's a big one that we have to tackle. Making sure we start addressing our taxation and realizing that we have to reverse a lot of what's been going on, because we have to remember we don't want to just go back to what we had before Trump, because what we had 10 years ago, that wasn't working for anybody either. This has been about 40, 50 years. We've had incredibly bad policy across the board when it comes to our taxation, our wages, when it comes to housing stock, healthcare, education, everything. Everything's been, we've basically installed a grift-based economy where every single one of the services we ever receive, there is somebody in the middle who's taking a large chunk of that money, and it's getting in the way. It's preventing decent services from being administered, and it's costing everybody a lot more than we're able to save and more than we're able to get ahead. And it's also closing ladders of opportunity. So after the taxation, I would look to policies and basically start by saying, I believe that there should be a floor under which nobody falls, a floor of opportunity and security. If you shore up these programs, if you're able to pay for these things through other progressive taxation, I'm talking housing vouchers, Medicaid, expanding Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, making sure more people are covered under these programs, you're filling in some of those holes so people don't fall through. You're creating at least a base layer for people to actually start building opportunity. And when we're discussing all this, it's not one thing, it is like 12 things. You do need to approach healthcare and realize that health insurance and coverage is cheaper than the alternative. than if somebody has a chronic, manageable condition and all of a sudden now they have to be treated for an acute emergency condition. A housing voucher is cheaper than homelessness. If we want to approach these things from a strictly fiscal standpoint, you can make those arguments. But from a moral, American, and humanist standpoint, these are the right types of steps to take. When it comes to us specifically in Staten Island and Brooklyn, we can do a lot of things to improve the quality of life of people here. Some of the biggest things I would tackle would be making sure that we are earning what we are worth. How do we do that? We do that by creating businesses that are able to pay the workers here a living wage so that you don't have to commute off the island, but that you could do it here. But you can't do that as easily if we're on a bust-based culture. We have a mathematical formula that changes every 3 years that tries to make the express buses work faster. They're still on the same roads. You can't add another HOV lane. So working on infrastructure within the district to make sure people can get around easier and off and on and off the island is going to be also a priority that needs to get handled. Handling our environmental needs. Like I know they're talking about the seawall. Who knows if that ever get built, but we need to shore up and make sure that the island's resiliency to environmental factors is going to be taken into account because when you're building housing stock, businesses, you want these things to not have incredibly sky high insurance rates. You don't want them to have to be, every time it rains, you can't drive down to the bagel store. It's flooded. That's just the way it is here. And we can't have that. So making sure that businesses can actually be built, that there's incentive to build here, that there's better infrastructure to get around, that they're able to pay livable wages. These are things here. On a federal level, making sure they have better health care, making sure our public education system is better funded, making sure that our kids are also better defended federally when it comes to the type of access to public education they should have. Putting the Department of Education back, for one thing, fully staffing that thing, fully funding that thing, and understanding the value of it and making the case. Again, a lot of the times I don't feel Democrats are making the case as to why we should keep these things or why they should be expanded. There's very good local reasons that we can talk about that will improve the lives of people in this district. So making sure that federally we're looking at these programs that helps people's quality of life, that locally we're looking at programs and money that is going to shore up a lot of the businesses that we have, make sure that we're funding a lot of the initiatives and programs that are helping people vocational training, especially here, as well as public education training or college-based programs, because there's no right or wrong off-ramp to the job market. They're just on-ramps. That's it. And so recognizing the value of all that and making sure that we're taking care of the most vulnerable among us in the district, which we're also not doing a great job of making sure that we're shoring up disability care, disability payments, so that we don't keep them in permanent poverty, which has kind of been also a problem nationally forever. There's a lot of things to tackle. I know I'm kind of drifting here and going on and on, but there's so much to do. And I have plans. I have a lot of plans for most of this. And I know that as one individual Congress member, no, you're not going to get it done. Finding like-minded people in this moment to recognize we can take the reins and do something fundamentally different instead of propping up programs that are collapsing, actually building programs that lift people in some type of a generational change. This is something that's possible.
I was going to say, let me talk about helping the disability. For a few years, I had a friend was living with me here who was on disability and was homeless, and I let them stay here. First of all, and this covers a lot of issues. First of all, it took him almost a year to gather all his get documentation. So when we talk about the SAVE Act in regards to voting, I had someone who had a place to stay, but in regards to how long it took to actually get documentation for that person, so then they could get disability. And it took them almost a year and a half to get disability. And the only reason why they were able to get federal disability was because they were staying on, in my living room, and I was letting them stay, and they didn't have any money coming in. And then when they got disability, the amount of money that they got every month could not afford an apartment here in New York City unless they went into public housing. And he didn't want to go in public housing. He was afraid to go in public housing.
Yeah.
So he'd rather go back and live on he was actually rather live on the train. And then my mom, who lives in New Jersey, when she passed away, discovered that the place where she lived was based off of income. And because he was on disability, he was able to afford a studio apartment in a nice apartment building in Keyport, New Jersey. And that's where he is now. And
good.
Living like that, and that's I found out that was a federally funded apartment building.
Yep. And this is that the people who are on disability federally are literally kept in poverty. A lot of people are unable to marry because that'll double their income and they will be forced out of programs, forced out of housing. And it doesn't do anybody any good. So reevaluating how these programs work and the functionality of it, like you said, if there is some type of income-based housing, a lot of things come back down to housing, and making sure that we're building and making it affordable for different segments of society who require housing, such as those who are disabled and on disability, Social Security, older people who are on Medicaid, things like that. So it's vital and it's important. And I think we really have to, again, kind of have the conversations about why we want to do these things and why this is actually not just morally right, but this is the most American thing we can do. And stop pretending that we're the country that everybody thinks that we are, because we're not. We've segmented and class and divided our nation into levels of citizenship and marginalized most communities. All immigrant communities that have come in and a lot of other people, and we constantly do that, and it's constantly reflected in the legislation that we have in how that those federal programs are administered. And it's quite obvious that we have a long way to go. We do. But this is something where, again, if we're talking about it openly, if we're explaining it clearly and making our case, then this is something where you can actually bring more people on board because it makes more sense. When I talk about the disability issue, for instance, most people don't know because if they don't know somebody personally who is receiving disability or is in that situation, they don't know the levels of, like you said, difficulty of obtaining documents, actually getting the certifications, maintaining it, getting housing, not being able to get a job because that'll get them booted off. So there's a lot of different things that we can make more, make people more aware of.
And this is a federal level. I think sometimes too, one of the things we teach history and I teach government, and one of the lessons that I always talk about is barking up the wrong tree when you talk to your elected officials. Like
Hmm.
sometimes um when we want something, we'll go, like, why aren't you doing this? It's like because it's not under your jurisdiction in
Hmm.
regards to, so I maybe in regards to talking about as a congressperson as opposed to a city councilman or a
Hmm.
state senator, um, the difference of being on the federal level, like where are the things that could help Staten Island, as a congressional person, as
Hmm.
opposed to like saying something more like immediate, like in, the city council or state government. Like, CUNY, CUNY is a city university and SUNY is a state university.
Hmm.
So so when I have issues with education on that matter, I'm going to go to my state
Hmm.
representatives. But as a congressperson, what do you feel are the biggest issues facing Staten Island on a federal level?
I think that federal level, well, affordability and economics. So it comes back down again to taxation as a main thing. How we're taxed and the money that's being taken from Staten Islanders, it's not just being taken from our taxes, it's being taken from our services. So the services we rely on, federal services through anything, through Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these have either they've stripped down and they've removed a lot of people from these roles because they don't want to pay for them. They've increased requirements for them, or they've reduced services for them. So reinstating immediately and expanding these services locally is going to both cover a lot more of the population through Medicare and Medicaid, expanding payments for home care for people who are elderly or disabled, and making sure those services are there and paid for are federal things that we could take care of. And then when it comes to healthcare in general, expanding. I'm not a big fan of the ACA. It didn't go far enough, and it's what we have. We need more. But making sure that those ACA subsidies are in place and expanded and covers more people so that people have the flexibility and aren't going bankrupt locally from that, because that's a big deal that's going on. Um, Other federal issues right now. I mean, the biggest one, I mean, it has to do with immigration and it has to do with the quality of life here too, because, 1 out of every 5 Staten Islanders and more than a quarter of the district are immigrants. And we're paralyzing an entire population here and terrorizing them, and we're affecting the workforce and we're affecting the economy. Um, and it's basically just a dehumanizing thing. So, abolishing ICE is one of the top things on my list there. It's not a catchphrase. This is not an old organization, and they're ceasing to function under the Constitution. They just need to go, and it's as simple as that. And they can't be trusted to function under any other law enforcement, agency.
No.
These people need to be fired, and most of them need to be prosecuted. Um,
I was not in, at least from my perspective, I was not in the abolish ICE camp at first,
mhm.
because I thought, we needed to have some practical mechanism to enforce border
Oh yeah,
and laws and all that. But I've been, we've, like everyone, we've seen them kill American citizens. We've
yeah.
seen them take people without warrants and ship them off to countries that they have no connection to.
Yeah,
And
we just found out 2 days ago that them arresting immigrants in 26 Federal Plaza in the courts was legal. They've been doing it for a year.
yeah,
So yeah, so there's things that, so locally, again, things that will affect the quality of life here. That's something else that you can attack. HUD vouchers, again, increasing HUD vouchers so that you've got more housing vouchers available in the district for people to get housing. That's going to be a big deal. Federal education protections, both federal money that goes to the school system and also an enforcement of the IDEA laws that are currently just abandoned, so that you have every single public school student in the district has, free access to public education, and is defended vigorously when there are issues for placements for kids who are disabled, for those who need some type of accommodations for IEPs or for whatever. So there are a lot of things locally when it comes to that. So their personal economics, their healthcare, their housing, their education that we can take on a federal level and actually start making a difference fairly quickly. And then again, infrastructure wise, we can start doing things like, trying to get federal funds added to state funds so that you can get a Mid Island and South Island ferry, start getting, plans going again. The Bayonne Bridge was originally supposed to have passenger service across that, right of way on the North Shore, supposed to go to Bayonne. We can
Yeah.
explore those train routes again, explore light rails, explore other
You-
infrastructure issues. So there's a lot of things that you can start doing immediately, and then other plans federally that you can start planning for, the near future and then the far future.
Can I ask you, in regards to if you were a congressperson right now, for example, we're at stalemate right now. You have ICE people in airports who are getting
Hmm.
paid while the TSA is not getting paid.
Yeah.
Um, how would you work with Republicans in regards to getting them to
actually
fund?
fund
Yeah,
actually
fund.
fund TSA. They've rejected bills to fund TSA
Hmm.
8 times now. They have and other parts of DHS and excluding ICE and Border Patrol, which is the
Yep.
sub contention. And so, like, what would your proposal be? I hope the Democrats in the Senate and in the House that they stand their ground.
They do stand their ground because they're doing this in order to get the SAVE Act passed. They're doing it specifically because they want some other legislation, and that's what they do. The Republicans inflict harm on some part of the federal workforce population in order to leverage the Democrats, so they think that they'll blink and give them something that's worse,
And in
and
the
and agree
meantime,
to something
saying that
worse.
we're the ones that are not funding TSA when we're actually proposing legislation,
Yeah.
fund TSA, just not the Department of Homeland Security.
And
While
this is where the
you
communication
guys
comes
figure
in.
it
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
you
And this is
know,
where communication, you have to sell this.
yeah.
Where the hell are the people on our side that are able to explain this clearly, succinctly, and say, "Look, guys, this is what they're doing," but I'm not talking about, somebody within the government. We need better communication and more on the same, more homogenous communication coming from, one or two single top voices, which we do not have in leadership right now, and it's very frustrating. That should be out in front of there every single day saying, "No, no, we want to do this, but you know what? This is worse." That's why
Let's
we need to keep this.
Well, yeah, well, I think that in both houses of Congress, the Democrats need leaders who will whip the votes on these things. And what I've
Yep.
seen so far from Hakeem Jeffries
Good
is
word.
that he will not whip the votes on any of these things. And so that's why you get Tom Suozzi and Henry Queller voting with Republicans to
Yeah.
fund ICE, even though they're killing American citizens in the street. You have Chuck Schumer standing out in front of federal buildings last year chanting, "We will win," in the cringiest possible fashion,
Mm.
without actually offering a plan to do anything about
Yeah,
this.
in the same breath, they should be also talking about the bills that they did propose and what was in those bills and how the Republicans voted against them,
Yeah.
which is what I'm not hearing. I'm not hearing
Nope.
those the only thing I'm hearing from Nicole's side is, oh, the Democrats, have their heels in the ground and they won't vote for this clean, as they call it, like bill, and so therefore TSA is not getting funded. And I just think it's a disgrace on both Democrats and Republicans that we have a country where our security is at risk at airports
Yeah.
because people are not being paid. Like, and then we have ICE in there who are being paid, who are walking around looking at their phones and and what are they doing? They're not doing anything. And
Nothing.
occasionally they'll question people regarding their immigration and they've arrested
Yeah.
people. Like,
Yep. Yeah. No, it's ludicrous, and we need a 21st century Congress that is we have to understand that whole bipartisanship days of the early 2000s is gone. We don't have a government that runs like that, and so we have leaders that still behave like that, and that's why we're not advancing this because they don't have that sense of, like I said, courage and strength to be able to make the case, be arguments, stay strong, and don't budge. We don't have that. We have, they're constantly thinking about, oh, I want to keep my position. I don't know. What's this going to look like on the Sunday news? It'll look worse if you capitulate. Just stand strong. If they want to go by polls, you're right. Polls after polls want them to stand up. They want them to be stronger, to take a deeper, stand and to explain better,
Well,
why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, Trump is on the ropes right now. I mean, I saw last week that we had it on our show. There was a woman who voted for him 3 times who called him a worthless pile of shit.
Yeah.
His record is just totally abysmal on everything he ever promised. And I think that, we need something other than the strongly worded letter caucus
but we also need to build
Yeah.
momentum, get people to not stay home. Because one of the things I
Yeah.
learned in a lot of is that sometimes Democrats stay home. So what are you going to do to get people to say, hey, we need to come out and vote? Because I
Yep.
do know, especially where I vote, when it's crowded, I know the Democrat's going to win. And when it's
Yeah.
average, Nicole's winning. So
Yeah.
we
I
need
think
to
that,
go out.
well, I'm out here hustling. I was out here last year. I've been out here. I'm going to every single community in this district. And I'm spending a lot of time in communities as well that, as I said, have been frankly just ignored. People who don't have a seat at the tables where decisions about their lives are being made. This is constant. And there's a reason why they're not in those rooms and not sitting at those tables because they don't want them there. These people are very eager to get out and they're spreading the word. We're starting, personally, this year, we've got a great grassroots movement going. We have tremendous enthusiasm, momentum, and support on our side. It's very encouraging. We're continuing what we saw last year into the cycle here, going into the primary. Getting people out to vote is going to be, a lot of it's going to be messaging too. And it's going to be connecting. And this is why I think I'm probably the best guy to go against Nicole in the Falls because, I know this place. I know the district. I lived and worked on both sides of the water. I've rented on both sides of the water. I have a life that's recognizable to a lot of people that live here. The jobs that I've had, the unions that I belong to, the strike lines I've stood on, the ferries that I've ridden, the buses that I've also been stuck on in the Robert Moses hellscape. This is, these are things that, and on both sides of the water. I know Brooklyn and I know Staten Island. I know both sides of the district intimately, and the communities. I shop there, I eat there. I had my first job at Notre Dame Academy as assistant custodian, and have worked on this side as well in Southern Brooklyn in a political way. So, this is going to get people out. People need to not just vote for somebody who's got a lowercase d after their name. They have to be enthusiastic and excited about affirmatively going out and voting for somebody because then they're going to bring other people with them. They're going to tell them about them. They're not just going to drag themselves to the polls because they know it has to be flipped. So generating that enthusiasm, making sure people are constantly engaged is going to be part of the process.
So let's talk about your team that's getting you out for your primary. So do you want to talk about who you have, like your campaign person, your social media people?
Give me 1 second. My dog is freaking out.
Oh, hey, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Just let them.
Nita. Anyway, yeah, well, Nidhi Khanna, who I've worked with and who organized all of the events with me last year. I'm sorry, 1 second. I
It's
apologize.
okay. We have Guillermo. We understand.
Yeah, we're also
Who's sitting here going, oh wait, yeah.
There we go. Anyway, Nidhi Khanna, I'll talk about her. She knows what she's doing. Her and I have worked within the district for many years, engaging many different groups. We've done a lot of work with nonprofits here, Last year, not only did we host all these events, we also filled a lot of food banks, little libraries, we registered voters. So, we've done a lot of things together. And as I said, she knows what she's doing, and I'm very enthusiastic about the type of strategy we have and about the team that we're currently building out. We have a tremendous group of volunteers that keeps growing by the day. Um, People have been, as I said, very enthusiastic in reaching out to us, and so we're working on both sides of the water. We've got teams in Brooklyn. I've got teams all over the island. You'll see me out there on both sides pretty much every single day with one or all of these people. So it's the team is good. It's building. We're building it out, and we're enthusiastic.
Absolutely. And so one of the things you brought up earlier is Citizens United, and one of the issues that has come up within the last few years, especially since October 7th and the war in Gaza, is APAC,
Hmm.
American Israeli Political Action Committee. And Nicole Maliotakis posted proudly her affinity for APAC.
Oh, sure.
She posed with those lobbyists, and one could argue, and it's been established that Bibi Netanyahu basically, dog walked Donald Trump into this war with Iran.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And and the Democrats are just as guilty of the APAC thing as well. You see Hakeem Jeffries is a big recipient of
Yep.
APAC funding. And so
Most Democrats in the city caucus do, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
And so so first of all, what's your position on just the issues in the region and the war, but also do you have any stance on whether or not you would ever take APAC funding?
No APAC money, zero. I'm not taking any money from APAC, any PAC affiliated with APAC, any group affiliated with any foreign government who is part of a PAC. That's a blanket. No corporate PAC money, no APAC, and no foreign PAC money. The war over there, look, Israel has asked, I think, for past 40 years, every president if they can go attack Iran. They all said no for good reason. Trump said yes because he's an idiot. And he doesn't think more than, like, frankly, 5 minutes ahead. Every single strategist knew that they would close the Strait of Hormuz if they were attacked. He claims that nobody knew that they would do this. But here we are. And now we're facing increased inflation. Up to 4.1% now has been released today because of the energy crisis that he created literally in the past 2 weeks. We're seeing our gas prices increase. When I did a press conference at a gas station last week on New Dorp, when gas was about 80 cents a gallon on average, more about 30% nationwide. It's increased even more since then. Diesel is $5.50, $6 a gallon here. And so, and then we're also seeing, I mean, we talk about the economic impacts, but the fact is that anybody who longs for war when you do not need one is an absolute sociopath. War kills. It destroys lives. It destroys cultures. It destroys civilizations. It destroys relationships. And there is no upside to it. We've killed hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians already. The war has expanded as we knew it would into multiple other countries. It's endangered our service members. We've had service members die. We've had many who are injured more seriously than they admitted because they're hiding all the stuff that's going on over there and all the damage that's being done. We've won this war apparently 5 times in the past week, according to Trump. And yet,
I thought we obliterated their nukes last summer.
Oh yeah, that was it. They'll never rebuild those nukes. And then 5 months later, yes, of course they did. So everything is immediate. Again, Congress is not just asleep at the wheel; they're derelict in their honor to the Constitution and for the defense of it. Because when they wrote the Constitution and put the power of war in Congress's hands, the House's hands, they did that purposely because the Senate at the time wasn't directly elected. Congress was that was where you had the most direct popular representation, and they wanted those decisions to be weighed on by the general population, or at least I know, and not everybody voted, but they wanted the people who were voting to really have a say in that. So these people would really want to go to war and think about what popular opinion was, not what one person wanted to do. But here we are right now, and Trump has, he's using our military as his own personal police force to literally go anywhere and everything and just violate international law, violate everybody's human rights, and get into, frankly, illegal and unconstitutional conflicts all over the planet. He bombed 7 countries in his first year as president. It's more than any other president in history. So the president appeased my ass.
Well, yeah, that was a regifted Peace Prize, but I, so I want to just jump ahead into the future. Let's say you win the primary, you
Yeah.
defeat Cole, you're in Congress. What committees would you want to be serving on? And also, with a Democratic majority, presumably there's going to be subpoena power.
Yep.
And so there's no shortage of things to investigate. Um,
Yep.
and so what committees would you serve on, and what are some of the ways you would use subpoena power to maybe bring some accountability to the Trump administration?
Question.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. Well, first of all, there's a lot of like pie in the sky committees. I'd love to be on oversight. Of course, I wouldn't get that the first round, but yeah, of course, I'm going to ask for it. Homeland security, because we need to have somebody who's rational in the rooms making the decisions about our privacy, making decisions about constitutionality, our protection, and balancing that with making sure that everybody has due process under the law. So there is some very specific things that I would like to do when it comes to oversight and protecting both our budgets and our money and where everything is being stolen and where our security, how it's affected. I really want to also make sure as a 9/11 first responder that they stop screwing with the 9/11 Trade Center program. They're either messing with his budget constantly since its inception, or they are messing with his staffing. Currently, they've just this week reassigned members of the World Trade Center program to ICE and to other federal agencies. And so there are some things personally that I'd like to handle when I'm there, and then there's some oversight, yes, of the Trump administration. They need to be pulled in front, and they need to answer some questions about what they've been doing to us.
Well, absolutely. I think one of the issues that I really want to see Congress flex their muscle on, and some members, even though they're in the minority at the moment, they are doing that. I've seen Robert Garcia be really effective on oversight and
Mhm.
get a lot of those Epstein documents
Yeah.
out into public view, even though they're in the minority. And so, would how would you prioritize? Because one of the issues I had with Max Rose is when he was in Congress, he publicly hemmed and hawed about whether he would vote to impeach Donald Trump.
Mhm.
I think part of it was uh, just the sense that he was waffling, and that,
He wanted
public,
to protect the moderate, what he
yeah,
felt was the moderate position. And
yeah.
you
And so
know,
like would
yeah.
you and so would you be, if that were, I'm not going to ask you whether you would vote on a hypothetical impeachment, because who
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen. And impeachment, I think, is proven to be a paper tiger in a lot of
I
ways.
was about to say, yeah. I mean, it's an ineffectual mechanism that
Mhm.
had a purpose that doesn't actually serve it. Because if anybody should have been removed, it was Trump last time, and he wasn't. Because of the way we've evolved our customs and norms within the Senate and the House, as opposed to what the actual rules and the constitutionality of it is. So, um, the founders did not anticipate that we would have this kind of like single party rule essentially, and that you would be able to overcome the mechanisms and the guardrails that are supposed to remove somebody who's doing something as boneheaded as he is. So,
And
um,
would you be more of a progressive caucus member, or would you be like Nicole technically is? She's part of the problem solvers caucus, even
oh
though
yeah, so was Max.
yeah, and she's a
Yeah,
problem causer. But like,
yeah.
what would you caucus with any of those like identity groups, or would you
No,
just?
and I'll tell you right now, and I've because especially over the multiple labels Democrats have kind of either been attached to them or have put on themselves over the past 10 years, I can't even keep up with. I'm a solid Democrat, uh, with a capital D. Most of my positions, in fact, all of my positions have been incredibly public. If anybody goes to my website, decillisforcongress.com, you will find numerous news articles where I have penned op-eds, been giving speeches, talking about the kind of policies that I talk about. Um, I don't want to label anything or attach myself to any ideology like that, because I really believe this moment requires flexibility. And if you get bogged down in any type of an identity, this isn't me saying, "Oh, I want to appeal to everybody." No, it's being. This is where we are right now. I am a solid. I've been a Democrat my entire life. I do believe in that. I believe in FDR's four freedoms. I believe in these things, um, and I have supported multiple different progressive initiatives. I've also supported other things where I feel like it wasn't going to work. Um, but going forward, I would align myself with people who fit the goals that I mentioned before. I want to find people who are going to work with me on this, and people who have that type of communication skill and that strength to stand up for the moment. If they're members of the Progressive Caucus, that's great. If they're not, they're not. But these are the type of stakeholders that I'd like to work with on there, because without any type of cohesion, you're not going to get anything done.
Absolutely. I agree with you in that statement. I'm a progressive, and I've only became a Democrat when I registered as a Democrat when he was running for president. Um, and I was curious why if I'm still here in the party, but I do agree with your comment though, and this time period right now requires a flexibility, not necessarily a moderate. I don't like
No, yeah, I know
I
what you
like the
mean.
word flexibility because, like, so for example, in regards to like impeachment, I think there's a lot of things that really need to get done that haven't been able to get done because we've just been stagnant
Mhm.
in our government. And I think the American people might turn on our government if, as much as Donald Trump needs to be, like be held accountable. I also think there's some things that need to also be done.
Mhm.
And so if we can do those simultaneously, or side by side, I think you'll have a lot more support from the American people because they're hurting. Like, so for example, get a TSA worker's paycheck,
Yeah,
and then he can't really listen to our reasons why Donald Trump should be held accountable until he gets paid,
yeah,
but if he's paid, he's gonna listen, and
yeah,
they go, yeah, that guy was a creep. Let's get rid of him.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Kara Swisher had the best term for him. She's called him a coin-operated president. And she's just and so well, and
Essentially, yeah.
yeah, well, and finally, I have one last question for you now.
Mhm.
Before you get to the general election, you do have a primary here.
Yes.
In New York 11, we had a candidate who was in the race for a long time, Troy McGee. He's no longer in
Mhm.
the race. And now we saw a new entry into the race, within the last few weeks,
Yeah,
Allison.
second week of petitioning. Yeah.
Yeah. Allison Ziogas. And so, a lot of people who may not pay attention to politics, especially on a local level, they'll say, well,
Mhm.
Democrats are Democrats. So what's really the big differences? So how would you distinguish yourself from your opponent in the primary process?
Here's what I would say. I have absolutely no idea because I know nothing about her. I don't know a single policy position. I've never seen her. I've never heard from her. And so for me to sit here and distinguish myself, all I can do is talk about what I would do. As of yet, and I hopefully will have the opportunity for forums or for further discussions to try to differentiate our views. I don't really have anything I can say right now because I frankly don't know where she stands on anything.
Do you know any plans in the future of any like debates or forums that the two of you will be at?
I'm hearing things. I'm hoping that there are. I mean, I think that it's a valuable
Yeah,
part of the democratic process, the primary process. I mean, I welcomed Troy McGee when he was here. Anybody who, in fact, primaries are good and they're healthy, because
yeah.
you do start to flesh out people's positions. You get to know them better before they enter any type of general. You get to make an informed decision about who you want to run against in the general. Um, so I certainly hope that there are multiple forms, so that we can actually start discussing the ideas and how best, because this is an incredibly consequential election that has long-term consequences. We need to make sure that when we're going forward, we're putting our best ideas forward and we're putting our best candidates forward. I happen to think that's me, but that's because I'm running.
Well, thank you, Michael Decillis. We appreciated this conversation. I know you have a busy schedule. You're a candidate. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us
I
tonight.
And
appreciate it. It's great to be back.
primaries, people need to go out. Democrats, when is the primary?
June 23rd.
June 23rd. And
Yep.
if people want to see your what you're all about, what's your
Yep.
website?
My website is decillisforcongress.com. And from there, they can also find all my socials. I think there's like 143 of them now. I don't even count, but there's a lot. So you can find me on all socials. I'm even on TikTok. I don't dance, but I'm there. And
Or they
it's
can Google the advanced. There's an article about you as well. So
yep. And actually, all the articles are also on my website. I have a page of all the different links to all the articles that I've either written in the past, featured in the past, things about all the different stuff we did last year with all the different events is all listed there as well. So anybody who wants to get kind of a snapshot of what I've done and who I am, that's a great place to start.
okay.
Thank you so much. This is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage.
I'm Nancy Richards, and we
Thank you
want to
so
thank
much.
Mike Decillis for coming and speaking about running for Congress.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have a great night, guys.
Take care.
Bye bye.